Hello, this is Tim Parker, Putnam County Property Appraiser, and we are here today at Hope FM to go through some of the amendments, some of the things that will actually be on the ballot this November. One thing that we did want to remind everybody about is hurricane season is obviously here, which ends on November the 30th. So there are provisions within the Florida statutes to address certain things that could affect your home during the event like a hurricane, but it doesn't have to be a hurricane. It could be potentially a fire or some residual effect like we've had here in Putnam County, flooding. So in the statute, and I'm not going to read the screen here for you, you certainly have the ability to pause that at home and read through some of the language here. In the language, what it establishes is a mechanism to keep your same value of your home if your home is destroyed. So, for example, if your home was 1,000 square feet and it was a $50,000 home and you're going to rebuild it, well, it's going to be worth more than $50,000 after you rebuild it. So you can rebuild anything that was under 1,500 square feet to 1,500 square feet without it affecting the current value of your property. If your home was over 2,000 square feet, for example, and you can rebuild it up to 2,200 square feet. So 10% more than what the original home footprint was. If you go over that, then we assess that as new construction. So it's a way for people, especially for example, the people down in South Florida whose homes were completely destroyed. It's a way for them to not have a dramatic taxable value increase in the home because their home was destroyed and they rebuild. So the general election is just a few days away. Tuesday, November the 8th, early voting begins on Monday, October the 24th. And so what are you going to see when you go to the ballot? So there are going to be elections for state senators and U.S. senators, and there's going to be a lot of judges that are going to be up for you to confirm them to still stay in their position. And we're not talking about any of those. So you're going to have to do a little homework and try to find out some information about those. What we're here primarily today to talk about are the amendments that are going to be on the ballot. So this first amendment really is tied to what has happened, for example, down in South Florida and really actually here in Putnam County. We went out a few days after, on that Saturday after the event, and noticed that there was some flooding that took place in certain areas of our county. So if you do something to actually raise the home up to mitigate the actual damage due to flooding, then it will not increase the value of your home. So normally, for example, if you raised your home up, then we would go out there and we would say, okay, now the home has a different value than it did when it was sitting on the ground. Now it's raised up and we're going to value this area underneath the home. So what this statute says essentially is if you vote yes, you're going to support state legislature to pass laws prohibiting flood-resistant improvements to a home from being taken in consideration when determining a property's assessed value. So if you vote no, you're going to leave everything the way it is right now, and we will not assess those increase in improvements. So essentially, they're just saying, okay, we want to raise the value, we want to raise our home up to prevent it from being flooded. Should we have to pay any taxes? If you vote yes, you're saying no additional taxes. If you vote no, we're going to say it's just the way it is right now, no changes. You move your home up and we'll increase your assessed value. Amendment number 2, abolishing the Constitutional Revision Commission. So this is a commission that is kind of unique to Florida. I don't think that there's any other state in the nation that has something quite like this. So the commission's a 37-member commission. 15 are appointed by the governor. The president of the Senate appoints 9. The House Speaker appoints 9. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court appoints 3. The Attorney General appoints 1. So these individuals take on the task of putting things on the ballot that maybe the legislature has not taken the initiative to put on, or perhaps there's been some talk about some citizens' initiative to put issues on the ballot, and they just have never gotten enough signatures to accomplish that. But what they're trying to say, this is put on by the legislature, okay? And all 3 of these amendments have to be amendments to the Constitution. Sometimes there are some issues, for example, that the CRC has put on the ballot that did not necessarily have to be an amendment to our state constitution. For example, I don't know if you remember, a couple of years ago, there was an amendment that was put out there that combined offshore oil drilling and vaping. So if you didn't want vaping to occur in an establishment that you were going to, like a restaurant or a store, then you would vote yes on the amendment. We don't want any vaping. But at the same time, you voted for no offshore oil drilling as well. So could those 2 things been handled by the legislature? Yes, they could have, but they did not want to address it. So the Constitutional Revision Commission addressed it, and they could have just done it legislatively, but they apparently chose not to tackle those particular issues. So the CRC took it on. It did pass. All these amendments have to pass by a 60% vote or higher. So the CRC also meets in conjunction with other ways to actually change amendments or to establish amendments. Could be through a voters initiative, citizens initiative, or they could also come through the Taxation and Budget Reform Commission, which don't know exactly how often they meet, but it's like every 10, 20 years as well. And they do something similar by putting issues on the ballot. So a yes vote supports abolishing the Florida Constitutional Revision Commission. And a no vote says we're just going to leave it on the ballot just the way it is. And then in 37, then we will get to see some amendments that they propose to be on the ballot at that point. So the 3rd amendment is the additional homestead property tax exemption for critical public service workforce. So it's proposing an amendment, and the legislature will have to write a law implementing that amendment once it is passed, if it is passed. So what it does is it gives an additional homestead exemption. So if you have a home, your first $25,000 of value is exempt from property taxes. And then if your home is valued up to $75,000, the difference between $50,000 and $75,000 is also exempt from taxation, except for school taxes. Those are not touched by the second homestead exemption. So this is proposing an additional homestead exemption on the value between $100,000 and $150,000 for these people: classroom teachers, law enforcement officers, correctional officers, firefighters, EMTs, paramedics, members of active duty, of the Armed Forces, National Guard. So what you have to decide is, if you're going to vote yes on this, you're going to vote to authorize the legislature to provide some language that will increase the exemption from $50,000 or for additional $50,000 on the value between $100,000 and $150,000. So what does that mean exactly for me as a property taxpayer? Well, even if you're not a property taxpayer, eventually someone is going to have to pay for this. So when you're voting for an exemption for a group of people, you have to realize that those funds are going to have to be paid for by someone else. So you, as a voter, have to decide, is this of such merit that I would be willing to pay for that additional increase in the property tax, because somebody is going to have to pay for it. When someone gets a break, someone else has to pay for it. So you just have to do your homework and decide, is this a worthwhile exemption to vote yes for? So it would save, if you lived in the county, Putnam County, it would save those individuals, if their home was worth $150,000, about $800 a year on property taxes. And if you lived in the city, about $1,000 a year. So those are important savings for those individuals. And you just have to decide as a voter which way you want to go on that. So a no vote says we're just going to leave it the way it is right now. And those people are just going to be paying what they had paid in years past. So in 2022, the legislature did amend the Florida statutes. So this is not something that you're going to have to be voting on. This is something that has already occurred. And the Property Appraisers Association of Florida was very, we spoke in favor of this happening. So when someone passes away, we send out letters to the surviving spouse that says, sorry for your loss, but there are some additional exemptions that you are now eligible for. And one of those exemptions was the widows or widowers exemption. And I was really kind of embarrassed to say that, yes, there is this exemption available to you. Here's all the paperwork. We're mailing it to you. All you have to do is sign it, send it back to us, and it saves you $9. So this $500 has been in place. This exemption has been in place for a long, long time. And we did lobby the legislature to increase it to $5,000. So now it does save you about $90 a year. Now, if you remarry, then that exemption goes away. So it was increased from 500 to 5,000. And this also applies to those who are blind or totally permanently disabled. Okay. So what was the impact to our taxing authorities? So, for example, in the city of Palaca, you notice that the taxable value decrease is about $1.125 million in taxable value. That equates to about $7,200 in actual taxes for the city of Palaca. In the county, it's a reduction of about $109,000 in actual tax dollars that the county is going to get. So also on the ballot, you will see a referendum about voting in for the school bond issues. And so that is a 4 yes, would be voting for those bonds to generate the funds available for new school construction. This chart from the school board website kind of gives you an idea of what the impact would be over the next 30 years for you as a taxpayer. And even though you may not own a home, you will still ultimately be paying for the schools in some way, shape, or form, because the Dollar Generals will probably have to pay more in taxes. So they may increase the price of your snacks or your milk or your whatever you might want to get when you go to the Dollar General. Okay, so everyone is really going to bear a lot of, part of this tax burden. And our top 10 taxpayers make up about 39% of our tax base. So they're going to be paying a bulk of the cost for these new schools, but everybody will actually pay some for it. And you'll notice it more so probably if you are a homeowner. So these are the published tax impacts for those particular amendments. So that's all I have for our amendment presentation. If you have any questions about these, you can give me a call at 386-329-0300, and I'll be glad to go over some of those with you. If it's more so to the school portion of it, probably on contact the school board for those particular for that particular issue and that information. But this is Tim Parker, and thank you for your time on this subject. It's a very important subject, and please get out and vote and make your voice heard. Thank you very much.